The leadership of Kenya is fiscal prudence. We are not able to budget within our means. The budget that was today has a deficit of around 846 billion Kenya shillings. If you actually interrogate the figures deeper and further, you realize that out of the 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings, the only money they are sure where it's coming from is actually 2.14 trillion. That is the direct revenue from KRA. Unfortunately, even that figure from KRA is debatable. Our budget office here in Parliament actually have projections of direct revenue at around 1.77 trillion. And therefore, I want to agree with the PS. They are not bearish, they are bullish in their assessment of revenue, because they are budgeting or they are crafting the budget with revenue projections that are beyond what can be traced in the past. The last year's revenue, KRA direct revenue, was around 1.7 trillion. They do not show how we are going to raise 2.14 trillion and over around 20% increment in an election year. And therefore, we lack fiscal prudence, we have overborrowed, and we have actually widened the deficit. Interestingly, President Kibaki left President Uhuru Kenyatta with only a national debt of 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings. In the first working regime of this government, the first year, the first term they worked, that debt was to around 4.5 trillion Kenya shillings. They borrowed around 2.7 trillion Kenya shillings. This handshake era has borrowed 7.2 trillion Kenya shillings. Actually, out of the 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings read today, 1.3 trillion is going to paying of debt and servicing of debt. There is no country that does that kind of a budget. Either there is laziness on the part of the treasury, or they are just very detached from the real Kenya that we live.
We beseech politicians as they do their politics, let's remember that we have a country to run. The negative rhetorics that we have, the violence, let's avoid that. If we avoid that, then definitely the projection is that the growth will be about 5%, which is not that bad. So if we are also able to get more people coming into, contributing into the food basket, or in this basket, this revenue basket, then definitely it becomes easier for us to collect more revenue. In the past 1-2 years, we have not had the number of tourists that we have had before, and basically because of the effects of COVID. But with the enhanced security in the country, how we have been able to deal also with Al-Shabaab definitely has been a plus for us, because we are now getting more tourists in the country. So it is all in our hands. Good people as Kenyans, even if this is an electioneering year, let's remember that we have a country to run. And if we remember that, I want to assure you that we will still collect more revenue, so that at least we reduce on the fiscal deficit. I'm also happy with the concept of the fiscal consolidation, whereby we need to retire some of the commercial debts, to replace them with concessional debts. Basically, that's a long-term strategy that we must now actualize. It has been happening for the last 3 years, but we want it actualized for this particular year, so that we also, we retire the expensive loans, in favor of the concessional loans. But maybe just to give some of the highlights that, which of course are captivating, is that, for example, the social safety net, where the vulnerable have been identified, who get the monthly stipends, over 15 billion shillings, which of course is an improvement from 10 billion shillings. There is also the universal health care, which of course has received a lot of financing. We will also make sure that we will have that exit clause in the managed MS, these equipments that are managed by the hospitals, so that they are now owned by the various counties. The other issue, of course, is the mitigation on drought. You know, for the last 1 year, the country has experienced drought, so there are funds that have been set aside to make sure that we are able to address that. The other one, of course, is about COVID. You know, people have forgotten that there is COVID. COVID is still with us. There are people who are in hospital, so we still need to inoculate our population. The funds have also been set aside. So basically, to me, it's a balanced budget. We are hoping that we are going to get the revenue that we have projected, despite the fact that this is an electioneering year. And sometimes, if the temperatures are not very good, then definitely our revenues might dip. So we are beseeching our politicians that as much as we are doing the politics, let's remember that we have an economy to protect. Let's remember that we have some revenues to collect. So to me, it's a balanced budget. It's a budget that is doable. We still have a deficit of about 800 billion shillings. And if you are able to collect more revenue, then it means that you are going to borrow less. So to me, it's a good budget.